And it brings to mind like this idea for me of God consciousness, like the singularity, like everything in there, jam packed,
Jam
in
packed.
this infinitely small, infinitely dense point. Everything that we know to exist for whatever reason expands out. And it starts off as this just, subatomic soup, or even before that, just energy, perhaps. And then it starts organizing itself. The chaos starts organizing itself into these little pockets of, complex order. First simple structures and then more complex structures, atoms, molecules, planets, stars, simple life forms, and then complex life forms like us that are, for whatever reason, at whatever point, able to contemplate ourselves and our existence. And it's like this massive continuum, and it's like at what point does the organization of these small constituents of God, of everything that there is, the subatomic, makeup of the universe, at what point in the organization does this awareness come in? Is it always there? Like, is it in every little bit of information? Or is it an emergent property that, emerges at a certain point of complexity? What's your guys' view on it?
I feel like us being humans, like one of the key aspects is being aware of awareness. So I think awareness is in everything for sure, but our complex structure is aware of that. It also, as you were explaining that, I'm not sure why this came through, but was that as that individuated expression of God subdivides itself into qualities. And as humans, we are kind of like an antenna for qualities. I'm not sure, I guess they can't see on camera, but there's a Kuan Yin, goddess of compassion, right? What is that? It's like an aspect of God that has individuated itself into this quality, a quality in which humans, if we want to, can embody. We can tap into the radio frequency or the signal of that. And that's kind of like the journey of being human, and kind of integrates into our original discussion that we wanted to speak to, just free will, right? It's like this, what are we other than just a frequency receiver that can receive what we want and direct it in a way we want, but not that much, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you see an ant, it's like, how aware of awareness is that ant? Not at all. How aware is it? It's like, we have, damn do we know? We have no idea.
know,
It could be very
Yeah.
aware. Not aware of its awareness, probably, but
Yeah.
just aware of what it's doing, you know?
Yeah.
Could be the most peaceful Zen monk you could ever have. Or could be intrinsically linked to the collective consciousness of all ants, that it actually is just one organism. There's not individual ants. It's just one thing, and they all are it, right? And I think that's kind of how awareness works as well, is we've got like these individuated conscious aspects, and how I feel like we're evolving into like kind of like being more cohesive, more collaborative, more together. Not all of us, but I think us coming here and doing a 4-person podcast is kind of a sign of that, right?
Yeah, and it's like it brings up for me. How do you distinguish the individual soul from awareness?
The individual soul from awareness. Well, I had an experience on ayahuasca, so I can only speak to what that was in relation to it. So I have no actual evidence other than that. But I was pulled out of my body as far as the out-of-body experiences are concerned. It's the only time that happened to that degree. And to that degree was very profound, because returning to my body was the most atrocious thing that no soul would ever want to do, knowing what it feels like to be outside of a body. But when I was out, I was like, oh, so God, talking to God, like, what is this all about? And it was a singular like one sphere, and there were comings and goings. That's all I was aware of. I couldn't comprehend to what degree. It was multi-dimensional. There's lots of things happening. The only thing I could perceive is that there were comings and goings, and I was like, what? So what is this? It was a game of hide and seek. And that game of hide and seek is, I believe, the comings and goings are splinters of the soul of that aspect. So it's like there are streamlined aspects which are like focused, like Kuan Yin, like the quality of compassion, right? And then there are individual souls that are just like everything, you know? And that's how I perceive it. Is it's going out, and where it's going out to is its own process, essentially, of becoming aware of itself. So it's like becoming like, you know, like from the grassroots of a mineral, and then, you know, becoming, you know, reincarnating throughout the process of becoming self-aware. See, I do believe we don't get the opportunity to just be a human as we become a soul, right? That soul needs to grow into the perspective of being capable of perceiving as a human does. And maybe some of the certain cases would be souls that are in human bodies that aren't prepared for it. I don't know, but yeah, if that makes sense. Does that make some sense? You know, as far as the way I perceived it from there, and obviously a lot left out before I applied into like how it applies to this human sphere without talking forever. But
yeah, it's interesting. It almost, it sounds like this is the only way I can think of it. It's like we almost step back into this field of awareness, and we can observe ourselves. As much as you can do that, though, because it's like in order for there to be a witness, an observer, then there has to be, you know, an appearance and consciousness there. So it's like that, I guess, kind of, it's almost like that image of, you know, like the infinite man going like back. It's like when you turn your eyes and look at yourself, you can just keep seeing more and more layers of yourself, right? It's like there is no end to it. And it's like, okay, so what is the self? Who's looking? And then if there's someone looking, then who's looking at that person looking? You know, who's witnessing that? And awareness is just like, I feel like that space outside of all of it, where you can't even say like a self or a soul exists. It just kind of is.
well, at the highest level, the all is just, we're just one thing, right?
Yeah.
But as an experience, right? And like, you know, we'd have to break it down from like the dimensions, right? And as we go down, we're getting more and more dense. But if you actually connect it from its truest connection point, it's as if it's like a frequency, you know, there's a frequency that's coming out, and that frequency changes at each level, right? And it all ends up going back to the one and the all. But and that's what we can connect to. We can get into that frequency, into that energy that connects all the way back up. But can we actually perceive it? Not really. We can only perceive it the way that an ant would perceive us, and probably even far inferior to that, you know? So it'd be like we're perceiving an aspect of that, and you know?
Through the lens of a human.
The lens of a human,
Yep.
which is unique. It's a unique thing, right? Yeah. Just like it's unique to have the lens of an ant to a human. There's like infinite of those, right? Being able to look, creation experiencing itself. Yeah.
Absolutely. And in that, I think in that place of awareness, maybe between, you know, like Viktor Frankl says, like in between stimulus and response, you have a space. And it's like if you master that space, you can master the world. And it's like that space where awareness shows up, if you're conscious of it, if you're a conscious being, like what kind of choice is there? It's almost like, okay, here you're left with, you know, you're given maybe two choices or more, but it's like you didn't get to choose that batch of options, and so it is really hard for me to fathom like what kind of freedom there is there for us, I guess, in a sense, like, if you take the panpsychist perspective and you think like all matter has some level of consciousness, and it's like, I guess a rock's options, which is like a pretty simple structure, but still somewhat ordered, in terms of, objects in the universe. There's not much a rock can do, depending on the environment it's put in. I guess it could, get kind of cooked by the sun, or frozen by ice and cracked open. But there's only so many things that can happen to a rock, right? But I think because we're such complex systems, what comes with that is like a whole new array of options available to us, but we're not able to access that whole, encyclopedia of options at our will, right? We're only able to pull up so much at once, and we actually have no fucking choice over that, right? Like, it's like, one that always gets me is like when you can't think of a word, and you're like, oh, and then all of a sudden, sometimes it can just come into your mind, like it just percolates into your mind. It's like, what happened there? Like, that just came out of nowhere, and like, it's not like I was like willing my subconscious mind to fish it out of my head or anything. It's like I don't have control of my neurons like that on that level. But, sometimes it'll come to you, and then sometimes it won't, and it's like, where's the agency in that?
I like that.
And I guess it's like when you try and follow a thought, or you try and follow an event back to its causes, you can just keep going back farther and farther back in time to an even deeper root cause or something. And it's like, it seems to be, at least in the reality that we're living in, and that causality is a thing. But I don't know, that gets pretty weird when you go into the quantum world, and there's not really an explanation for things. Things are just popping in and out of existence, and that's also what we're made of. And for all we know, we're operating on these fundamental laws of the universe. Maybe we haven't discovered them yet, all of them yet. I don't think we have. But there are certain, laws that govern the movement of particles. And so it's like, we're made up of those particles. We're governed by those laws. And it always just, I can't seem to escape that reality where it's just like, everything seems very determined. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the universe works in inside out, upside down ways, and it speaks in symbology and archetypal language, and it doesn't really make sense unless we start to open our perspective to that inside out, upside down symbolic way of understanding. And I feel like the more I try to understand, the less I'm able to understand. So I try to just bring it back to my first awakening when I was incepted. Right around that time when I started leaving my body and like watching myself sleep, I would have these downloads where I would see that like the protons and the electrons that rotate around the nucleus, like the planets do around the sun, and it just kind of like expands outwards into the universe. That same microcosm is happening within my own body, and that like my mind is God of my own body. Like I am self-governed and through this process on the microcosm, but that is like the macrocosm. And so in some symbolic way, whatever is happening up there is happening in here through me. And it kind of doesn't make sense in the human mind, but I was able, in many circumstances, through either like psychedelic experiences or wherever, downloads or something, I was able to just like wipe all of that, like trying to understand why things happen the way they do, and like erase all logic and just like be in the energy of it and feel that like expansive, infinite, universal thing. And then I was able to get like a glimpse of understanding of what that thing is, but then when I try to like get into what it is, I'm just ugh.
See, I resonate with
Can't
that
even.
deeply. That happens to me all the
Does it?
time. It's
Yeah.
it's a feeling rather than, and it's like, how do you
It's
articulate a feeling in such a way? And I mean, we've even had conversations sometimes where I'm like, I physically can't explain like what I'm experiencing. I just know what I'm experiencing, and it's almost like you can kind of visualize it, and you can understand it in your own way. But to put words around that, there isn't really words for it. I don't think.
I don't feel like there are words. I feel like it's a felt experience, and I feel that from my experiences of working with 5-MeO is that medicine is a felt experience, and it's known as the God molecule. So it's, to me, when I experienced that and I reflected back on that time in my early 20s when I had that inception of the universal cosmic oneness within myself, it was very much a felt experience. There's no words for me to be able to describe this language or idea, there's no words for it for me. It's
So
just a feeling.
if someone's unable to get into that felt experience, so if the idea is certain people are getting in their own way, and it's like, well, how can I get more into this human felt experience? What would be the pathway to get there? Because a lot of people are feeling disconnected. One of the greatest things about the plants is they connect us back in, right? We get hardwired back in. If someone did not have the plants, what would be a pathway to get there into that felt experience?
Well, I mean, I have my pathway, which was fascia. And for me, like, I think of that as like we have our human lens, and it's just widening the lens so you can see more. And that is simply just from like pulling dense things out of you, like stress and trauma and things like that, because then you pull those things out of you and you just expand and expand and expand. And I think that, breath work and practices like that, any kind of expansive practices work in the same way. So that's my experience anyway, but
All in different vehicles, getting to the same space kind of thing. Yeah. I like to meditate or work with archetypes, and I find that when I visualize archetypes, like right now I'm working with Mother Mary, I have a picture of her and I meditate with her with a candle, and she's just this figure of unconditional love, right? She has the Immaculate Heart, and just has these lights beaming on her, and through that portal, I'm able to access the channel of unconditional love by staring at her and praying and saying, like, I am unconditional love. And then this, like, channel opens, and then I'm in this super cosmic realm with this energy. I don't know what that's all about, but I have a feeling that we're able to access these portals of energy through certain different gateways of whatever we choose to do. As soon as we put our focus and our energy on something opens, I feel, if we put enough attention and focus and presence onto it.
And that's really cool. It harkens back to what you were saying, where like certain souls in existence can like really focus and just completely actualize like one quality. And it is almost like by doing that, they're like gifting us this like portal into that like deeper felt sense of existence of God consciousness. And it's like, here, like, focus on me, like, and what I mean, and like, this is your way in, this is your way through, because we do need that. We need like focus points, because our attention is all over the place as humans.
Yeah.